we're Indigenous community led. Everything is Indigenous. We're constantly we're moving into communities. We're putting it on them to say, okay, well, what do you need? What needs to happen here? And not only that, with the training we provide here, while we're training them, we're the exact same way. Like the way I am now, I'm going to be this way tomorrow. This is legitimately me.
Farming isn't just about getting your hands dirty. It's also about transformation, personal transformation, professional transformation, and transformation of mind, body, and soul. Tea Creek Farms has created a space and name for themselves in just 3 years, being awarded the Food Hero Award from the FAO and a BC Land Award. They are literally changing lives and changing hearts in the Indigenous community. George Sampare of the Nisga'a Nation, he's a member of the Frog Clan, has been with Tea Creek Farms almost from the very beginning. And in this interview, we explore the powerful place and powerful space that Tea Creek Farms has created for over 1,000 people in the last 3 years to uplift their lives and to really step into who they are and to polish the rough edges, as George likes to say. And we also talk about some of the hard parts that they've been through in the last few years at Tea Creek. Tea Creek is this place where people come and learn all sorts of skills, from farming and gardening to carpentry, and they even celebrated their first Red Seal chef recently. They're a place where farming is used as a transformational tool, and the land is a safe place to discover and to explore and to heal. I'm really excited to bring this conversation to you with George. Thank you so much for joining us here at Heart and Soil. And if you're liking these interviews, be sure to hit the subscribe button and ding the bell so that you know when the next interview drops. You make yourself an amazing day, and big love. Thank you so much for joining me today, George. I deeply appreciate you and creating the space for this conversation.
You're welcome.
Yeah. And so, George, Tea Creek Farms is a pretty special place, and it's not like a lot of farms, or maybe even any farms that I know of that I've come across. So tell us what makes Tea Creek so special.
I believe the big points in why Tea Creek is so special is that we are Indigenous-led. Everyone here is Indigenous, comfortable amongst, we're all it's Indigenous-led. We're culturally safe on top of being Indigenously led. We get different people from different nations coming in here, and we approach it with respect. When they come through the gate, it's always the same. And the part using our culture as a teaching tool is, in our culture, it's a role and responsibility. It's not something that you can either decide to do or not to do. It's your role and responsibility. So that definitely gives the person coming through the door like, oh, I must check myself. So anything that may have any ideas of sometimes when we get some people coming through the doors, there's a bit of rough edges to them. Once we polish those away, you always know that there's something beautiful underneath that. They just guarded it. They guarded it that way, and having our culture safe environment just polishes that off. It's like, oh, hey, there you are. Come on in. Now we see you. Now we hear you. Now, and we understand what you're saying. And what you're saying matters to us. That's the big difference. And so they can put their guard down. So that's land, that's culturally safe. We are land based. We maintain an environment of personal safety that goes hand in hand with showing everyone respect. It comes up with the holistic model. Everything's connected. You see, this is our matrilineal society. Myself, I'm speaking, not Tea Creek, but and I'm an Indigenous Gitxsan or Niska, and we're a matrilineal society. We follow our mothers, so everything is connected. So, and my mother taught me this at a very early age. You know, you disrupt this, you're going to disrupt something down the line. You don't know when it's going to hit you, but it's going to come back to you, and it always does. Again, we have people coming through the doors where we have to polish them. We're not changing. We're just taking that guard away that was put there because they didn't know there was nothing to provide comfort or to provide growth for that thought, right? That natural, that indigenous thought. There was no safe place for them to bloom, to make that grow. Well, Tea Creek is that place. And you know, when I first walked through the door, my partner, she told me of Tea Creek, and she's a social worker, and she's like, you got to see this place. I was like, yeah, whatever, you know. And I had recently gone through a life-altering injury, so I wasn't in the best place. I was, again, all rusted up. My indigenous ways were broken. But when I came to Tea Creek and I saw it, I couldn't believe it. I was like, wow. And my eyes lit up again. And then I was like, this is for real. And I said it to Jacob. I said, this is for expletive real. Like, this is real, Jacob. And he's like, yes, it is. I'm so glad to meet you, George. That was, I don't know, 3 years ago, you know, and then right away, I've been here ever since. It changed my life, right? And so I've been with Jacob because of that, because of, I see how it works, you know, literally it worked for me. We're Indigenous community led. Everything is Indigenous. We're constantly, we're moving into communities. We're putting it on them to say, okay, well, what do you need? What needs to happen here? And not only that, with the training we provide here, while we're training them, we're the exact same way. Like the way I am now, I'm going to be this way tomorrow. This is legitimately me. Just like, have you met Jacob? That's
Not
legitimate.
Yet.
That's legitimately Jacob. You'd be blown away when you met him. He's an amazing man. He's an amazing man. Yes.
The richness of Tea Creek is, you know, the roots reach into the center of the earth, and the branches reach up into the heavens and out into the universe and beyond. So it's, I mean, clearly, like, George, you touch on so many points that are just have really deep meaning to me and to the Heart and Soil community, which is creating that safe space and that safe container for people to land where they're at, who they are, and noticing what their superpowers are and what their gifts are. And then I like the way you say, just polishing them. And I think that's one of your gifts too, George, right? I think one of your gifts is seeing people's strengths and superpowers and then bringing that out to help them bloom and blossom. Would you agree?
I agree with that. And you see in our society, our matrilineal society, what I'm giving back again with the roles and responsibilities when I speak to those individuals who maybe are a little too rough, you know, when they come through the gates, I tell them, you know, that's your role and responsibility to your society. You must remember that. And that again, that puts it on them, right? Where they're literally given that control back. Whoever took it away from them, that doesn't matter. That doesn't matter one bit. You know, one thing I always say to the rough ones is, it's not your fault what happened to you. It's not your fault. All of those horrible things, it's none of your fault. Believe me, it's none of your fault. But it is your responsibility to make it right. That's the hard one. When I first heard that, and I heard that here at Tea Creek too, I was so angry. I was like, Oh, there you go. But it was so empowering when you realize the words, like hear those
Yeah.
words, say those words again. And then you're you know who you're looking for. Then this is where you mentioned it earlier. Then you're leaving the earth. I'm going to my ancestors for answers now.
Yeah.
Now I'm in another level. See, people are people who have been um not, I don't say damaged. I would say that we're a little rusty and we
Mhm.
polish them up. It's always there. It's always there because they always have that connection.
Mhm.
And that is our saving grace. And as indigenous people, especially our matrilineal people, is
Mhm.
that it's almost like a reset. Once someone says to you, why are you behaving that way? You have roles and responsibilities, and you're like, you kind of reset, and you're like, okay, and that works. It works. So I use it all the time.
It does. It's super powerful. And George, you touched on this a little bit. You said, and I'm going to use my words, because forgive me because I don't remember exactly the words you used. But it sounds like you weren't too big of a fan of Tea Crate to begin with, and I'm
Hmm.
curious, um, like why that was, and what was it specifically about Tea Crate that touched your heart and changed your mind?
Well, my partner, she had been to Tea Creek first, and she was doing getting her she was finishing off her SSW in university. She was just wrapping up. But while she was doing that, she had to do um, work experience, I guess, or she had to do hours of volunteering. And
Mhm.
anyway, she came across Tea Creek, and then she ended up falling in love with the place. And then she was living here in Gitwangak, and I was living in Terrace with my children, raising them there. I was working in a sport check. I was total corporate, you know what I mean? Like everything corporate. I was like, using children for horrible things, to sell shoes, all this
Mhm.
corporate stuff. Anyways, she kept coming home and she was like, "Oh, I'm so glowing, so happy." And I was like, "What's up with you? What, you're so happy and you're giddy and you're like nothing bothers you anymore." I'd even try with my corporate mentality, my, dare I say it, my patriarchal mentality towards her. She still was beaming. I was like, "What's up?" And then she told me about Tea Creek, and I was like, "Well, me." Having survived, my father went to residential school. Um,
Mhm.
me having survived him and what he survived, and my father's still lost, but you know um again, that point of none of that was my fault, but it's my responsibility. That's what I had to use
Mhm.
to get over that. I'm so I used to use that as a clutch to get me to anything I wanted before, right? And then I realized, yeah, but I have a ceiling like this high. I can
Wow.
never see anything. I can never say anything past there, right? When I have this sad story to share over and over again. Once I got out of that, um, that roles and responsibilities comes in. You know what I mean? And then but Rosalie, she was again beaming, and then I finally came out and I walked the land, and Jacob was nice enough to the one that took me on the tour. And I was like, yeah, my partner Rosalie, she's telling me about, she's happy this, happy that. And then he walked me through. They had some raspberry and strawberries growing, and I was just like all guarded. I had my own rust on me. Um,
Mhm.
you know, being working for a corporation, knowing, having to flip and realize that I was doing it all so wrong. And I finished the tour with Jacob, and I said, Jacob, is this for effing real? And then he's like, this is for real, George. I slept on it for 3 days, and then I remember when I was like, I don't want to work. I literally I just walked out. My store manager um, was just getting worse. I was like, you know what? I think I'm done here. He's like, what? Because I was a manager at the time too. It took me 7 years to get up to, and then literally I just said, I'm done. And then Jacob, I told Jacob, and Jacob's like, well, do you want a job? I was like, I'd love a job. So that's how it started. And, I've never looked back since. That's like going, it feels like, it doesn't even feel like work. You know what I mean? Like, I'm so happy. And I mentioned I had an aortic dissection. That's why I had to, I used to be such a go-getter, but then I had to drop down to managing a sport, like a manager of a sport check, right? Like literally everything I used to be, I was half of it. And I was so bitter, so angry, just hating the world for it. But I was the one that did that to myself. While I was all this success, I was, I didn't, I wasn't, I was caught in what a lot of our men are caught in, which is, um, it all starts with trauma. Trauma carries trauma. There's trauma. Then how do you try hide trauma? You try hide it with addictions, and with our men in our matrilineal society, we hide it through alcohol, drugs, and you see it. You see how it affects our men. We're taking that back, and all we're doing is we're taking it back by simply saying, oh, look what you dropped. Do you want to pick it up, or do you not want to pick it up? And then if I see they're so close, I was like, and by the way, it's your role and responsibility to pick it up. Do you have, and this is what I use, do you have any nieces or nephews, right? Especially nieces, especially the females. How many of those do you have? What a lot of these people don't understand is that they're a part of something bigger, so much bigger, a web. It's such a web, right? We have this, my partner, she has this exercise, literally put it down on paper. You have little stars and little boxes, I believe. It doesn't matter. It could be anything. And she's like, well, who's your mother? Who's your father on each side? Like if I ask you that, hey, who's your mother? Who's your father? Who are their mother and father? Well, each of those mothers and fathers are a clan member of a different group. We have in ours, we have like 4 clans. So each time you say that, there's a connection to, oh, well, you're connected to this wolf clan and this frog clan. And the child or the man, whoever it is, they're like, I didn't know that. I didn't know that. And, they'll say, oh, no wonder that person was so rude to me that when I was doing something real silly, they got mad at me. And, well, that was their role and responsibility to get mad at you because you were straying. And they're like, I didn't know that. It's like, well, we start teaching them. And all it is they're picking up what is theirs. They just, along the way, someone took it from them, and they thought they had nothing. But legitimately, they have an existence in the universe. They're a part of the universe.
Yes, that's so powerful, George. And I can feel the agency that happens and the self-confidence that's birthed from that awareness and that gift that you're giving. I'm curious about, so T Creek Farms is just over 140 acres, right? But the actual farming part is what some might call small. It's just a few acres or less, or
it's
how many?
Like, oh yeah, not very much of the, I don't know exactly percentage wise, but you're right. It's not very much of the land is developed for actual producing, but the land that they do have developed, we have developed over the time I've been here. Amazing. Like the potatoes, tomatoes, we've gone squashes. We have a woman, Georgina from Mexico. She has all this opportunity to share with us. Like legitimately, we're connected. We talked about the Ozette potato. The potato, the Haida potato. They call it the Haida potato, the Alaskan potato.
Yeah.
That came through this way. That came from Peru. That the origin of that came from Peru. And people can say, this is we're supposed to do another interview with another group. I forget who they are, but they want to talk about that potato, right? And how did the potato get here?
So how did it get here? How did it get there?
So this is awesome. A little quick story if we had time. I'll try to shoot through it. Is the Ozette potato originates from Peru. Now they can say, how did it get here? There's two ways it could have got here. The Russians, oh no, three ways. Sorry, the Russians, when they circumnavigated all of the Americas and came back up, they claim that they picked up some potatoes and the Ozette was in there. The other is what was the other group of explorers? Was it the Spanish? They're saying they brought it up here along the West Coast. And there's a third one that says, no, both of you didn't do it. It was actually traded up along the coastline. And we had trade then. And that's a hard one for a lot of you know how they say those that win the war write the history books? Mm-hmm. Have you ever heard that saying? Like, yes, those that win the war write the history books. Well, this sounds like another case of that. It's like everyone's going to want to believe how those that potato got here, right? But I'm sure not many are going to believe that. No, you guys didn't trade it all the way up here. You silly. It's like, well, clearly it came in a ship.
Clearly. Well, I'll tell you, when you shared the third way of trading it up the shores to landing in your hands, I got goosebumps.
Right.
It just makes, to me, that makes a lot of sense. And I understand the other ways, but to me, that makes a lot of sense. And it gives me hope.
Yeah. But I used, when I was reading on that, and then I read the debate on it, I thought, you know what, all three are right. Well, you know, let's just say that all three are right. Because we still have the Ozette potato. It's such a gift. You know, it's such, last year we had such great success with our harvest. Like, they're so beautiful. We saved all of them for seed, and it's an experiment we're doing. So we're going to plant all of those monstrous Ozette potatoes and see what the heck happens. That's the beauty of it, right? And regardless of how it got here, I'm grateful for whoever brought it here. You know what I mean?
Yes, amen to that.
Right?
Yeah. So what is it about farming and working with the land that is so transformational or creates that safe transformational space for people?
The biggest, one of the most wonderful things about Tea Creek and its location, if you look at Tea Creek on, say, maps, Google Maps, whatever, you're going to see that there's a convergence on this little, you'll see the roads going up through Highway 37 north, heading down to the river, Highway 16, down to the Skeena River, up into different territories. So, and this was a hub. This literally was and get this was a food hub before, like way before the Alaskan Highway came through. This was an actual food hub. So we're finding, as we're clearing the land, we're finding old fire pits. We're finding old cache pits, like everywhere. And we're like, they were growing things here, you know, they're growing things, and we're just finding out. And that's what we're allowed to do, is we're allowed to pick up what someone either just say, you know, put that down. And I get it, you know, the part of history that people don't want to talk about is when another group of people wants to annihilate another group of people, and the steps involved to annihilate them involve taking away their culture, taking away their food, no one wants to say the G word. No one wants to say it, right? And you want to be polite about it. So even I myself being polite about it, and yet, you know, this is what we were dealing with. But the land was our people's land. And then when they realize that we say to them, you know, your ancestors, when you pray, when you meditate, or whatever it is you do, know that your ancestors are with you, because they are with you. You're not alone. You know, you have your mothers, sisters. You know, I talked about the web of connections before. They must realize that everyone who passed before them, everyone who they believed in, that the one person they always come in with, oh, I was doing great in life till this person passed away. It's like, you know, that person is watching you in the spirit world. Now, do you think everything? What I love saying is when someone's down on himself, I love saying, well, do you think of the most wonderful person in your life? No, they're looking at you. Do you think they would say that to you? Would they say that to you? Would they say that to you? And it's like, no, they would never say that to me. I said, so why would you say that to yourself? That, you know, that's a little quick grounding to say, you know, value yourself, because, you know, if someone took that away from you, that value, you valuing yourself. So I give it back to them simply by saying that, you know, allowing them to feel. You have to, I talked about neuroplasticity a while ago. You have to allow them, because how else can you understand what love is if you don't, if I say, you know, what's a, you know, think of one person you love, you automatically, you picture them. And then right away, there's like 3 words that pop in your head beside that person. You mean those words, don't you? See, that's how powerful travel is in our mind, in our, literally, I can shoot through time. This is all through me healing myself, understanding, reconnecting to myself, knowing that this is holistic. You know, my grandmother and my mother, they were screaming this in my ear when I was a young boy, when I was a teenager. But I was so scarred by the trauma, right, of my father, that I was too lost. You know, I was too lost. And you know, it's only through, I get that I had to do grief counseling. There was a part of my life where I hit a wall and I couldn't get out anymore. And I was like, why am I not healing anymore? I found out that I had to grieve the things that I was not going to be. And I that was hard. That was so hard. Like, I had to grieve all of that. And then I had to grieve the things that happened that I couldn't change. I had to grieve all, you know, grief was a part of my healing as well. And grief is not a horrible thing. We always, people give it the most disrespect in our culture. We give grief such respect that, you know, we sing, we even have a song when a dear one, this is a part of Tea Creek too, is, it sounds horrible, is the funding is always so hard for Jacob to keep this place afloat. Like, we wait. We had many wonderful people that were waiting, but they're not here anymore. That breaks my heart. That they're like, when's Tea Creek gonna open? When's it gonna open? And then we're like, did you hear? And I'm like, what? And they're like, yeah, this happened. I'm like, what? And you know, these are traumas. The one, like, I'm just being honest. This is the world we live in. One was she was a young, and she OD'd fentanyl. Another, you know, it's three. It was like boom, 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 all within a month. And they all had come through Tea Creek doors. And then we were shocked by it. Like, why is this happening? You know, why is this happening? And then at the time, Jacob was on a fundraising mission. Like, he was going nonstop. He was busy. And then when the young girl, when that happened, it flattened Tea Creek. We all collapsed, and we had to gather. You know, we had to gather together, and we had to lift each other up again and say, well, we're gonna fight harder now. We're gonna fight harder now. And that's what we do. That's what we have to do, right? We can't not. I can't not. They say once your eye is open, you can't close it. You can't cover it, because it sees. Once it sees, you can't shut it. So that's where I'm at now. I won't shut it. So I'm just gonna stare at it. I'm gonna say, how do we fix this? Yes. And that's where Jacob comes in, because he's such an amazing man. You know, he never gives up. He's always like right now, he's off in Prince George meeting with there's a group of now they're organized different interior Indigenous people. So they're 17 communities. There used to be like 30 communities. Now they're like 17. They're all gathering in Prince George to talk about food sovereignty as well. And so you see, we're all trying to reconnect. All of us along in BC are trying to reconnect to that food sovereignty.
Yeah, that's really powerful, George. And so tell me about what food sovereignty looks like in your community.
So to me, food sovereignty by definition, simply being in a safe environment to have food that is culturally yours. You know, it's safe to grow. You have everyone there working together. So as indigenous people, we're always, again, those that win the wars write the books, the history books. Now we were written off as hunter gatherers. This food hub that it was before tells opposite of us being, oh look, there's some peanuts, let's go gather them while we can. It's no, we like, let's grow a heck ton of these hazelnuts, or let's grow a heck ton of these little fruits here. And we organized it. We knew that, okay, we're going to have time to gather this, we're going to have time. But the idea to lump ourselves into something that we were not, that was the hardest thing to crack out of, and say, no, we can do more than that. We can actually provide enough for everyone. And everyone in the communities, once they start doing it, it's like, how do you say it? They're like, oh shoot, it's almost like they knew how to do it beforehand, and they're like, this is so. And then the word to me is fun. Everything becomes fun. We come in with Tea Creek comes into a community. We lay down, like, say we'll do the garden for them, tilling, and they're like, well, what's the next step? What do we do next? And when the funding's there, when in an ideal situation, if the funding was there, we would say, all right, now we're going to lay down seed. What kind of seed do you want? And then we'd say, we're going to hold this class, and we're all going to learn how to grow this. We go to community, and we hit everyone that we say, if we did 10 houses that day, we'll go back the next week, and we'll lay down those potatoes and say, all right, this is what you're growing. And then when it's time to anything to do with the growth of potatoes, we bring them right back in Tea Creek, show them how to take care of those potatoes with ours here, a model, yeah. And then we duplicate it on the community.
Wow. So I have two questions. One is, so you are farming at Tea Creek, and you have you've had over 1,000 people come in and go through your program at Tea Creek. Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah.
In the last 3 years, like it's very new, which is phenomenal. And learning all sorts of skills, from farming to carpentry to cooking. And so you're hosting this learning space on Tea Creek, and then you're also working out in the community and helping people grow gardens and grow food at their homes. Is that right? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah.
Wow. That's so cool.
It is. It's so we'll have basically we'll have groups of laying out what we're going to be doing in, like, for this season. We're already, okay, we must see this community. How many people are involved this year? How many people are involved in this community? We have continuing relationships with surrounding communities in the last 2 years, and then seeing them grow. And not only that, the most wonderful thing I love is that just because Tea Creek started it, we'll like, something amazing will happen in, say, a Eastern community, and we're like, that is amazing, and we'll spread it. The hardest, one of the biggest things that I think is such a injustice to the farmer, all farmers of Canada, is this idea that they must hide the successes. That's such a backwards way of doing it, hiding the success when you should share it. And when that Eastern community shared their success, it just flooded through the valley quickly, and then everyone was succeeding. And they're like, how did this come to be? Oh, well, Sikidach, that's Glenval. Well, they thought of it in their farming program, and like, well, damn, I'm sure glad they thought of it. Well, they would have never thought of it. And you see, that's the thing, is we all work together. That's the thing. It's not Tea Creek's success, it's everyone's success. And that was theirs all along. They just didn't, they just didn't know that they could pick it up.
That's really cool. So, George, what are you seeing as some of the big transformational, or even little transformational, because sometimes little transformation fosters big personal transformation, right? So what are some of the community transformations you've noticed within the outreach?
So here's an interesting one. It's interesting that And I noticed it when I was growing up myself. As I educated myself, then became a resource. I noticed that in my own community, I wasn't treated as a resource. I was treated as a commodity, like I was just a commodity. And I understand it because I was on a band reserve, right? I was living on reserve, so I was just treated that way. That's what I see is losing that idea that they always have to be something they're not. That's the biggest thing when the people come through and they have this guard and they have this, I'm this, and then you're like, oh gee, that must be so exhausting carrying that, and then to be able to let them drop their guard and let them be themselves. That is a wonderful thing to for myself. When I remember when I first was free of all that burden of being an Indigenous person in Canada, like it sounds horrible to say, but this is how I legitimately feel sometimes when I have to guard myself up just to be Indigenous in this country. But being here, being able to just be Indigenous, and be feeling safe being Indigenous. There isn't, and get this, it's not anyone who comes through the gate, whether you're Indigenous or non-Indigenous, we're all treated the same because we're all connected. Now it's up to the individual to agree to that or not. And if you agree to that, then we share in the energy. If you don't agree to it, we don't share the energy. That's fine too. That's respected too. We respect everyone that way. I do, especially. That's my role and responsibility within my society, is to provide a happy place for everyone.
Yeah.
That when I come in a place, it's with respect. When I leave, it's with respect.
So how do you create that culturally safe place?
So I think one of the big things, what I love, we have a counselor who we talk with on a daily basis, like monthly, like every Friday, the last Friday of the month, we'll all meet in the log house, and we'll have a meeting with the counselor. And how's everyone doing? And we'll talk about. I love that we initially started with the counselor to talk about hard people that came through the gate, and it's like, but the truth of the matter is, there was parts of what I started noticing when the people that came through the gate, oftentimes there'd be a time where I'd be triggered by that person, but all it was a familiar trauma that I could associate to. Now, me making sure I didn't hijack his trauma and make it my own, that's what the counselor was there for, right? But he was also there for me to see it and say, now I know, now I have the tools how to deal with such a character that has this type of shield in front of him. And I see it through his eyes now. I'm not so like, boy, you're just being horrible. I literally say, I see the trauma now. See, so we're doing that, where we're allowing ourselves to pick up the tools we need when someone's in trouble, or not. I don't like using in trouble, when someone's unlearning something that isn't working for them anymore. And then I say, can we plug this in there? What do you think? And then if there's still a struggle, then I'll say, well, it is your role and responsibility to your society to do this change. And that usually does it. And usually along the way, I'll always say, who's your mom? Who's your grandma? Because that right away, like I remember I mentioned earlier, think of someone you love. And then why would you want to change for the better? Just think of someone you love. You would want to change for them, wouldn't you?
Yeah, for sure. Is that your leadership team that works with the counselor weekly, George, or is that everybody in the program?
That's everybody. This is another thing too, is we have a big group of okay, so how many we have here on? 1, 2, 3, I think we have about 7 still on now. One guy who's like just cleans up around here, make sure the fires are going. Then we have Jacob the boss, then we have Jessica the boss, then we have Candace, we have Joelle. They've all been worked professional lives their whole entire lives. Joelle's a Red SEAL. They're all accomplished, but we're all equal. That's part of our roles and responsibilities. We're all equal, and it's important that, we can always throw in all those metaphors, the weakest link, all of that, but really it's about having that's if everyone can feel the safety, you know what I mean? Like if we all say, if we all brought everyone in a room and say, okay, now we need everyone to understand that, we want everyone to feel safe in the room. Does anyone feel not safe? And maybe someone will say, I don't feel, well, why do you not feel safe? This is just an example, by the way.
Yeah.
And so it'd be like, once you get it out in the open, whatever it is, or who feels hungry or whatever, it doesn't matter, right? Once you get it out in the open so that it's no longer a taboo to not talk about, people are more likely to talk about it. And sometimes just a little we all have safety meetings in the morning. The reason why we have those safety meetings not only is to do housekeeping, tell everyone, this is where the safety areas are, smoke extinguishers, all of that stuff. But we also have a moment where, we get people to say, how are you doing today? Because they understand. And we learned it through going through the counselor, that when we had that safety meeting in the morning, people legitimately felt safe in the safety meeting, in that ring, so they could express themselves, knowing that no one was going to shame them, no one was going to make fun of them. And that was a big thing. That was the biggest rule, right? Is to say that, and to have the counselor train us, everyone equally. Even doesn't matter who you were, we'd be able to help anyone who's having a meltdown. One of the hardest things, I think, for non-Indigenous people to ask us is how we can better get back to our way of living, and what kind of help we need to get there, to get to back to where we were before. I think a lot of that has to do with letting go of outdated laws that have no use for anyone anymore. In particular, I'm speaking of the Indian Act. It's a patriarchal piece of legislation that holds us captive in this country, as I see it, as being nothing more than a slave. There's so many attacks on our society through that act. And we have to understand that we can't be seen as a get over it kind of group of people, because what we're facing is systemic. It's like it's constant, it's chronic. It's a chronic. So we have to just we have to look at that for what it is and say we have to get rid of that racist policy and then move forward from there. In a perfect world, if that happened, that'd be great. Okay, that's step one, right? And then I also believe is I think it should be all right for not all right. I think it should be important for the people who are making the decisions to understand the history of this country and legitimately understand the history of this country. The gains that our people are making, trying to work our way out of what we were put into, just simply by being on an equal, simply be seen as a human being, would start there. You see, and it's hard, right? Like you asked me, I don't want to say loaded question. Is you asked me a hard question, and it's very hard to answer without being emotional about it. Saying, how do we change how the Indigenous people are being treated with the way they want to be farmers? It's like we didn't want to just become farmers. We were always farmers. We had it taken away from us through legislation. We had it all taken away from us. We weren't allowed to get land anymore. We're still not allowed to get land. It's like, why? What have we done? What have we done to the people of this country that we cannot be given that afforded that equal opportunity? Then we start there. That's why it's hard for me. I'm sure Jacob would come up with an intelligent answer. I just come up with my answer, and
Well, I think you came up with a really intelligent answer, George. And I think that what I love about Tea Creek Farms, and I guess it's farm with no S, right? Tea Creek Farm. What I love about it is the inside out approach. And I think like we see it in a lot of different places, and I don't mean to minimize this conversation about Indigenous food sovereignty or food sovereignty in general. when I say this, so my apologies if it comes across this way. My perspective is that what we're seeing is, and what we've moved into in consciousness and in society, is an outside in approach.
Mm-hmm.
And when we go outside in, there's compression that happens, there's like collapse that happens, there's all this disconnection that happens because we're constantly looking outwards for the answers, for the resources, for the guidance, for whatever it is that we're needing. And what Tea Creek Farm has done so beautifully is brought agency and what you call roles and responsibilities and transformation inwards and back to its foundation. And I think that is something that we all can learn from. Like, I just imagine what the world would be like if we all had a place, a safe place like Tea Creek to land and to have conversations in and to be seen and to be heard. And it's not like I see you and hear you from the outside in, it's I see you and hear you like in the messiness of who you are and in the brilliance and the beautiful resourcefulness of who you are.
Mm-hmm.
So I just wanted to reflect that back to you and say thank you for modeling that for us. And
that's awesome. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Just before you go, tell me what excites you the most about what you're working on at Tea Creek, and what your hope is for not just Tea Creek, but for the work that you're doing as you move forward.
Where I see, the most exciting thing I see is Tea Creek moving. You mentioned, you say Tea Creek. I like because right away I was like, you know, you're not wrong when you say Tea Creeks, because there is more than one. And we had a group from Kikatla. Kikatla's on an island like out in like on the coast of down Rupert. They came all the way inland to learn farming. Now they're mirroring everything we taught them out on the island, and they're sending us photos of their greenhouses. Everything that they're growing. They're getting towards food sovereignty, and they're like, they've always joked we're Tea Creek's little first one. We're first Tea Creek 1A or something, they said.
Yeah.
And then we have another group from Whitset. That's up further inland, so a different group of Indigenous people. The coastal is Kikatla, the inland's Whitset. Same thing. That we're Tea Creek's other farm. That to us was touching when they had said that. They claimed that they were Tea Creek and they're trying to mirror it, and we're like, well, we want you guys to be like Tea Creek, and so now that's the goal I want to see, is that and for them to come back and then train, right? And that's myself. One thing I found is that there's no resources for our Indigenous men mental health. None. Zero. I have so many men. I started in our language we say wek. Wek means brother. I started a WEX group because there was no such thing being offered to our men where they could have this culturally safe place to be. At the time, the only reason why my WEX group worked is because Tea Creek already had a reputation. And so these men with these issues with their, how we say, you talked about, I love that you mentioned that we're a part of everything. Close it right down to its smallest form. You have your Otson. Know what your Otson is? That's your spirit. You take care of that the most, because that spirit is your key to everything else. That spirit gets you everywhere. You can travel in a second and you'll be somewhere. If you believe it, it's going to happen. I can't convince anyone, right?
Yeah.
But that's how my life worked out. And then again, allowing these men, to say, because a lot of our men didn't see that. They didn't see that they had this immense beauty in them, and they're only just finding it, right? And just like me, I'm going to take up counseling so I can help these men to that level. And then how I say it is, we're raising an army to help raise ourselves, right? picking ourselves up again. That army includes women, that army includes men, that army includes children. You know, it's all of us. That's the biggest thing. The biggest joy I get out of working at Tea Creek is when they leave, because they see. At first, this is how it happened. Okay, I'll be honest. We let out a group, and then we're letting them back out to the world. We know that they're going to face the world the moment they go out. And then sure enough, we're back, you know, being marginalized, being not seen, being called whatever, you know. That's the world that our Indigenous people live in. And then we were like, but we have to be stronger than that. We have to say, well, keep fighting. So we knew that was going to happen. And so having that counselor come talk with us every Friday, right, saying, this is how we empower them. So when they do confront that wall, when they leave the safetyness of Tea Creek, at least they'll have some armor to say, you know, you're not going to take this shine away so quickly this time, you know. And I tell them, you fight for it. You fight for your happiness. You know, that's why I use the metaphor, you know, raising an army of happiness. You know, does that sound like a horrible army to have? That is just, you know, all they want is happiness. You know, that's not a scary army at all.
No, not at all. That's actually feels like an army I'd like to be a part of.
Right.
What's your biggest challenge at Tea Creek? Your biggest hurdle?
I believe the biggest hurdle is funding. Funding is this is a complication of again the Indian Act, how it funnels. Yep. The Indian Act has become its own monster. It's $1 billion yearly, billions of money being flooded into something that has so many sieves that sieve every which direction in government that it's like our people. When I say our people, I mean all of Canadian citizens don't understand how corrupt that system is, and how brutal it's slaying our people by the dozens, you know, by so many ways, so many horrible ways it's slaying our, and you know, they should let it go.
So how can we support that? How can, like, what needs to happen to fund you? You know, how are you getting funding? And then beyond that, what else can be done?
With Jacob, the way Jacob, because Jacob's on a fundraising tour right now. He's constantly, how I see him and how I'm helping him is by word of mouth, talking to you. If I go to, now what I find myself doing is I'll go to farmers markets, terrace, local farmers markets, and I'll slowly walk and I'll have the conversations. You know, I'll do the footwork to find out what I'm hearing at the ground level. You always say we're land-based. Well, you're land-based for a reason, you know, because we know everybody. I know who grows mushrooms. I know who grows, you know, who has the best potatoes in the valley. I know who has the best apples in the valley, because I go to these things, constantly refreshing the list of needs, and that's a rethink or relearning process. You know, the neuroplasticity again is, let's change our way we talk about farming. You know, let's not be so secretive about it. Let's share in our successes. Not only that, let's share in the finances. You know, there's every farmer in Canada is getting such a horrible treatment. You know, let's look at that and say, you know, we're all getting a horrible treatment here, when we should be lifted up for what we're providing, right? Especially your work, the work that you do. Like thank you so much for the work you do. If it wasn't for us lifting each other's up this way, where would we be? You know, right?
Yeah, I agree. So, George, for people to actually donate funding, though, is there a place? Can they just go and visit the website, or do they pick up the phone and call?
Check out the website. Usually, if you call, you'll probably get Candace. She might be able to answer your questions. But as far as the website, I've never ever looked to see if there was a donate area. But we had talked about it. Like Jacob's like, you know, he gets it a lot where people are like, we really like to help, and then he's like, you know, I don't want to do any of these little fund me things or anything. And it's like, well, I said, Jacob, some people really do want to help. Maybe we ought to think about that, like a place where people, if they want to
Right.
donate, they can donate.
Right. I think,
Yeah,
I just went to the website quickly here and I don't see anything, but I did hear, um, there was something cool, really cool that Jacob had mentioned on one of the videos he did. And he talked about creating an impact fund or something like that. And I just thought that was so brilliant. So it doesn't look like there's a place to like donate on the page, but if somebody who's watching this would like to connect with Tea Creek, then you can go to teacreek.ca and send an email and go about it that way. Yeah. So
thank you for the plug.
yeah, my honor, my pleasure. George, thank you so much for doing the work you're doing, and thank you for sharing just a small part of your story with us. And I wish you all the best and many blessings, and I cannot wait to see where and how Tea Creek continues to create and hold space for transformation.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.
Big love. Have an amazing day. Be sure to go and follow Tea Creek Farm on Facebook at Tea Creek Farm, on Instagram at Northern Dad, and you can check out their website at www.teacreek.ca. I'm super inspired by Tea Creek Farms, inspired with hope and possibility, and my heart feels happy to hear George talk about bringing together armies of happiness and holding safe spaces for people to deepen into who they are and to polish off those rough edges and to step into their brilliance and into their gifts. And I'm wondering how that shows up in your life for you personally and professionally, on your farm, or in your garden ecosystem, or maybe it's in your professional ecosystem. What are you doing to create a safe space? What are you doing to create a safe space for yourself personally to land and to show up fully in who you are? And what are you doing to create a safe space on your farm and in your garden and in your ethos, in your life, to create that space for yourself and for others? At Heart and Soil, we are holding that vision for you to have that safe space to land. And that is one of the things we value most deeply, is meeting people where they're at and noticing what their next steps are to step fully into who they are and into their brilliance. So wherever you're at, trust you're exactly where you need to be in this moment, and know that life is happening for you, and feel life and the world organizing around your success. And just like a seed knows to sprout and to grow as it's watered and as the sunshine hits the leaves, you know exactly where your next steps are and what they need to be. So trust them and take those next steps. You make yourself an amazing day. Thank you so much for joining us. And if you haven't subscribed to this Heart and Soil TV channel yet, be sure to subscribe if you're liking the interviews, and share them with your friends. It helps them get seen. And we like talking about regeneration and regenerative farming, gardening, and living. And hit that bell so you're notified about when the next interview drops. And if you haven't subscribed to Heart and Soul magazine yet, hop on over and you can join our newsletter for free, or you can join our community. You make yourself an amazing day. Big love. Thanks for joining us.